The courtroom was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Daniel Okoye sat at the defense table, his hands folded tightly, knuckles white. He had not slept in 3 days. Across the room, the jury avoided his eyes, already burdened with the weight of a decision they hadn't yet made, but one many had already formed. Daniel was accused of murdering his business partner, Victor Hale. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Victor's blood had been found on Daniel's jacket. Daniel's fingerprints were on the knife recovered behind the warehouse. Witnesses claimed they heard shouting the night Victor died, Daniel's voice among them. And worst of all, Daniel had no alibi. The prosecutor stood confidently, pacing before the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is not a mystery. This is greed. A man who wanted it all, and took a life to get it." Daniel's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. The courtroom murmured. Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered that night clearly. Victor had called him urgently, asked him to come to the warehouse. When Daniel arrived, the door was open. The lights were on. Victor was already dead. Panicked and terrified, Daniel had touched the knife in shock before realizing what he'd done. Before he could call the police, sirens filled the air. Someone had already made the call. Someone had been waiting. After 3 days of testimony, the jury returned. The foreperson stood, voice shaking. "We find the defendant guilty." Daniel's mother collapsed into tears. Daniel didn't move. He felt numb, as if the world had ended quietly, without warning. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. As guards led him away, Daniel whispered only one thing: "I didn't do it." No one listened. 3 years later, in a dusty evidence room, a young investigative journalist named Lena Morris reviewed the case for a documentary on wrongful convictions. The blood on Daniel's jacket, believed to be Victor's, had never undergone advanced DNA testing. At the time, the lab had been rushed. Underfunded. Lena pushed for a retest. The results changed everything. The blood on the jacket belonged to another man. Someone who had never been mentioned in court. A man named Evan Brooks, Victor's former employee, fired weeks before the murder after a heated dispute over stolen money. Lena dug deeper. Phone records revealed Evan had called the police before Daniel arrived at the warehouse. CCTV footage from a nearby store, previously overlooked, showed Evan running from the area minutes before the sirens. The truth had been buried under convenience. The courtroom filled again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The judge listened as new evidence was presented. The prosecutor from Daniel's original trial stared at the floor. After a brief recess, the judge spoke. "Based on newly discovered evidence, this court overturns the conviction of Daniel Okoye. He is hereby exonerated." Daniel fell to his knees. His mother screamed with joy. 3 years stolen. 3 years of silence. 3 years of being called a killer. Evan Brooks was arrested 2 weeks later. Faced with the evidence, he confessed. He had framed Daniel, knowing the scene would tell the story he wanted others to believe. Daniel walked out of prison a free man, but freedom felt heavy. In an interview months later, he said softly, "They didn't just take my time, they took my name. But the truth waited." The courtroom clock still ticked, but this time it was counting forward.